At 12:30 a.m. on August 4th, 2025, a 14-year-old boy walked into a church in Middleburg, Florida, and asked to use the phone. He called 911 and told the dispatcher he had shot and killed both of his parents. He then asked to pray.
Do you pray?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, I'll listen to you. Well, I was going to ask if you could pray for me, ma'am. Right now? I'll definitely be praying for you, son.
Deputies responded to the church and took him into custody without resistance. At the same time, officers were sent to the family's home near Silver Point and County Road 220. Inside the residence, they found the bodies of David Lee, 44, and Brandi Smith Lee, 45. Both were dead from multiple gunshot wounds. The suspected murder weapon was found at the scene. The teenager was identified as their son, Trevor Lee. He was arrested and charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder.
We have new information out of Clay County. A 14-year-old boy is in custody after sheriff's deputies say he killed his parents.
News for Jax reporter Brianna Andrews joins us live from the scene on Silver Point. This is near County Road 220. And Brianna, deputies say that he walked into a church to turn himself in.
Yeah, so this whole thing started just after midnight. 911 received a call from a 14-year-old boy inside this neighborhood who said he killed his parents. Now, those parents are between the ages of 44 and 45 years old. Now, deputies believe this began with an argument between the teen and his parents. They believe the teen used his parents' gun, but are still investigating. But that gun was recovered at the home. Now, you mentioned the boy walked to a church. So that all happened before deputies arrived. He walked to that church where he waited for deputies. Deputies responded and took the boy in custody. Now, they say both parents were shot and killed. Both of their bodies were found at the house. Now, right now, the Clay County Sheriff's Office is investigating whether there is a history of mental health issues here. That right now there is a very active crime scene, and they're still working on this. So as long as we continue to stay on this, we'll continue to provide updates, and of course, we'll keep you posted. For now, I'm reporting live. Brianna Andrews, Channel 4, the local station.
According to investigators, the shooting happened late Sunday night after a verbal argument inside the home. The motive has not been confirmed. Police have not released details about what was said during the argument or what led to the violence. The teenager reportedly walked over a mile to the church after shooting. There is no indication that anyone else was involved. The family had no known history of domestic violence. The teen had no criminal record. Friends described the family as normal, involved, and well-liked in the community.
They were probably the best or one of the best families I knew. They were funny, and they treated me very well. They told me all the time that they loved me like a son, and they treated me as such.
There were no previous calls for service to home. No mental health history has been disclosed. The case is under active investigation. Stay with us as we unravel this shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from, and what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. David Lee, 44, was described as a community-oriented man who prioritized structure and stability within his family. Public records indicate that he had been living in Middleburg, Florida, for several years, along with his wife and children. While no specific career title has been disclosed by local authorities or public sources, multiple acquaintances have referred to him as a consistent provider and responsible father. He was known to be reliable, disciplined, and protective of his family, particularly his teenage son Trevor and younger daughter. Brandi Smith Lee, age 45, was recognized in the local neighborhood as a nurturing and involved mother. She had active involvement in her children's education and frequently communicated with school staff regarding Trevor's academic performance. She also engaged in extracurricular and community-based activities, including church programs and school-related volunteering. According to neighbors, she was visible in both parenting and social circles and was considered dependable and present. David and Brandi had been married for several years. According to available community statements and interviews with acquaintances, the couple maintained a reputation as a structured, disciplined, and close-knit family unit. While their household was seen as strict by some of Trevor's peers, others described it as protective and orderly. Their parenting style reportedly combined boundaries with support, though their expectations were perceived by some as high. The Smith Lees maintained strong community ties. They regularly attended a local church in Clay County and were involved in school events, particularly those connected to Trevor's academics and activities. Their home was known for being open to Trevor's close friends, including Kyrie Bamman, who stated that he was welcomed and treated like part of the family. Based on local sources, the household did not appear to raise concern among neighbors or the community prior to the incident. The couple is survived by their daughter. Her identity and age have not been released by authorities, in accordance with privacy regulations surrounding minors in criminal investigations. Trevor Lee, the 14-year-old son of David and Brandi Smith Lee, was enrolled in a local school in Middleburg, Florida. He was in the early stages of high school and had no known history of disciplinary or legal issues prior to the incident on August 3, 2025. Teachers and peers described him as academically gifted, respectful, and quiet. His school records, according to officials, did not indicate any prior behavioral concerns or red flags. Trevor's best friend, Kyrie Bamman, described Trevor's home life as supportive and welcoming. He stated that Trevor's parents frequently treated him like a member of their own family.
They were probably the best or one of the best families I knew. They were funny, and they treated me very well. They told me all the time that they loved me like a son, and they treated me as such.
There were no public reports of child welfare involvement, law enforcement interactions, or emergency calls to the Lee residence prior to the incident. However, investigators are currently examining whether Trevor may have shown signs of emotional or psychological tension in the months leading up to the event. While there's been no official confirmation of diagnosed mental health conditions, the Sheriff's Department confirmed that a full psychological evaluation is underway. Some classmates have stated off record that Trevor had become slightly withdrawn in recent weeks. It is unclear whether this was related to academic pressure, family dynamics, or internal emotional struggles. At the time of the incident, Trevor was not on any known medication and was not undergoing counseling or therapy. Though his relationship with his parents was described as generally close and structured, some individuals familiar with the family have speculated that the dynamic may have been tense at times. No specific examples or allegations have been publicly confirmed by law enforcement or school officials as of this report. The incident took place late Sunday night, August 3, 2025, and was reported to authorities in the early hours of Monday, August 4th. According to the Clay County Sheriff's Office, the sequence of events began with a domestic dispute inside the Smith Lee residence. Details of the argument have not been made public, but authorities stated it escalated rapidly and ended in the fatal shooting of both David and Brandi. Based on the investigation timeline, there was no indication that outside parties were present during the confrontation. The family's daughter was not home at the time, and no one else was harmed during the incident. There were no calls to 911 before the shooting occurred. It remains unknown whether the argument was a continuation of prior tensions or if it was a spontaneous escalation. Officials have not released information about what triggered the conflict or whether there had been any warning signs earlier in the day. Investigators are reviewing text messages, emails, and in-home devices to reconstruct the final hours. Authorities have stated that the firearm used in the killings was found inside the residence and is believed to have belonged to family. The type of firearm has not been publicly disclosed, but it was located near the crime scene and several spent shell casings were recovered. The official forensic report is pending, but is expected to confirm that both victims died from gunshot wounds sustained during the altercation. Late on the night of Sunday, August 3, 2025, potentially around or shortly before midnight, a violent incident occurred inside a home near Silver Point and County Road 220 in Middleburg, Florida. The home was occupied by David Lee, age 44, and Brandi Smith Lee, age 45, along with their 14-year-old son, Trevor Lee. Their daughter was not present during the events. According to law enforcement reports and dispatch records, a fatal shooting took place inside the residence. Trevor Lee is alleged to have retrieved a firearm from within the home and used it to shoot both of his parents multiple times.
A double murder investigation in Clay County. A 14-year-old boy is in custody, accused of killing his own parents at their Middleburg home, then walking to a church to call 911.
The exact number of shots fired has not been publicly disclosed, but authorities confirmed that several spent shell casings were recovered at the scene. Both victims, David and Brandi, were found deceased inside one of the bedrooms of the house. Official autopsy reports have not been released at this time, but preliminary findings confirm multiple gunshot wounds on both individuals. The murder weapon was recovered inside the home and is believed to have been legally owned by one of the parents. No other individuals were harmed during the incident. The couple's daughter was not present at the residence during or immediately after the shooting. Authorities have not stated where she was at the time. There were no signs of forced entry, struggle, or attempted escape by the victims. Based on the physical evidence and condition of the scene, law enforcement does not believe anyone else was involved in the incident, nor that there was any immediate threat to public safety. Following the shooting, Trevor Lee reportedly left the home on foot. He walked approximately 1.4 miles from his residence to Cross Point Church, a local church located within walking distance of scene. The walk is estimated to have taken between 20 to 30 minutes, depending on pace and conditions. Trevor arrived at the church shortly after midnight. At that hour, the church was closed to public, but a small group of staff members were reportedly present inside the building for late-night work. Upon entering, Trevor asked the staff if he could use the phone. The individuals inside the church allowed him access. At that point, Trevor placed a 911 call to Clay County Emergency Dispatch. According to reports, the call was placed without signs of panic or urgency. Trevor identified himself to the dispatcher and calmly stated that he had just killed his parents. He also requested that the dispatcher pray for him. These details were confirmed by Clay County Sheriff Michelle Cook in a media briefing.
Just after midnight this morning, our 911 communications center received a call from a young man who stated he had just killed his parents. He stated that deputies could find his parents at the house and that he had walked just over a mile away to a church and he would await for deputies to arrive to take him into custody. Deputies responded immediately to both locations, the church and then to a home on out here in the Middleburg area. When deputies arrived to the church, they took 14-year-old Trevor Lee into custody. When almost simultaneously deputies arrived to the address in question, they found two deceased individuals inside, David Lee, 44 years of age, and Brandi Smith, 45 years of age. Both of the deceased appeared to have gunshot wounds. Based upon our preliminary investigation, and we're still very early in this investigation, it appears that there was some sort of domestic argument last night between Trevor Lee and his parents, and that this shooting culminated from that argument. This does appear to be an isolated incident, and we have no further threat to our community at this time. Again, this is a very active scene. Our detectives are working diligently to try to figure all of this out. We do want to extend our deepest sympathies to the family, the friends, and all of those who are affected by this heartbreaking incident, and we would like to ask anybody in the community that may have some information regarding Trevor Lee or his parents to please reach out to us at 904-264-6512, and with that I will take any questions.
The dispatcher remained on the phone with Trevor for approximately 10 minutes. During the call, he is said to have emptied his pockets and removed his backpack. There was no mention of a weapon in his possession at that time. The church staff present reported that Trevor did not exhibit aggression, did not attempt to flee, and remained stationary while waiting for deputies to arrive. According to the church staff, Trevor's behavior was compliant and subdued. They did not report any resistance or threats made by the teenager during the entire interaction. He remained seated or standing in the same location while the dispatcher maintained contact with him. The dispatcher continued talking to Trevor until law enforcement arrived. Once the 911 call was logged and dispatchers confirmed the address and statement provided, Clay County deputies were dispatched to two locations simultaneously, the church and the family residence. At Cross Point Church, responding officers arrived and found Trevor Lee waiting near the location where he had made the 911 call. He was taken into custody without incident. No force was used, and there were no injuries reported during the arrest. Trevor did not attempt to run or deny his statements. He was placed in custody and transported to the Clay County Juvenile Detention Center for processing. Due to facility limitations in Clay County, arrangements were being made for his continued detention at a secure juvenile facility in the region. Meanwhile, a separate team of deputies arrived at the Lee family residence. Upon entering the home, officers conducted a sweep and found no other occupants inside. In one of the bedrooms, deputies discovered the bodies of David Lee and Brandi Smith Lee, both deceased from apparent gunshot wounds. Medical personnel on scene confirmed that both individuals were dead at the scene. A firearm was recovered inside the house, which deputies believed to be the murder weapon used in the shooting. The weapon was secured, photographed, and submitted as evidence. Several shell casings were also found in the bedroom area, consistent with the use of that firearm. The exact number of rounds fired was not released. Deputies reported no signs of forced entry, robbery, or struggle. The home showed no indication of ransacking or external intrusion. Investigators concluded that the victims were likely in a vulnerable position when the shots were fired, although further ballistic and forensic testing was pending at the time of reporting. After the scene was secured and initial evidence documented, Clay County Sheriff's Office made the incident public during a press briefing held later in the morning. Sheriff Cook confirmed that a juvenile suspect was in custody and that there was no active threat to the community. She also confirmed that the suspect had made a voluntary 911 confession from the church and had cooperated with law enforcement throughout the process. The case was officially classified as a double homicide. Trevor Lee was formally charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder. Due to the nature of the charges and the age of the suspect, prosecutors would later review whether the teen would be tried as a juvenile or an adult under Florida law. Further investigation was launched into the circumstances leading up to the shooting. Detectives were tasked with reviewing family history, school records, any behavior reports, and the possible motive behind the domestic argument that allegedly preceded the incident. Authorities confirmed that an argument had occurred late Sunday night before the shooting, though the specific content or nature of the disagreement was not disclosed to the public. The sheriff's office stated that mental health evaluations will be conducted as part of the investigation. Public reaction to the event began circulating on social media and local news outlets. Several individuals who knew the family expressed shock at the development. However, law enforcement continued to emphasize the confidentiality of ongoing evidence and withheld many details to protect the integrity of the case. As of now, the case remains active and under continued review by the Clay County Sheriff's Office and the State Attorney's Office. Additional updates would depend on court proceedings and further forensic findings. As of early August 2025, psychological evaluations were initiated to assess Trevor's mental state, competency, and potential motives. Investigators began reviewing a wide range of factors. Authorities confirmed an argument had taken place late Sunday night between Trevor and his parents. The details of that dispute have not been publicly disclosed, and officials have not confirmed whether the conflict was isolated or part of a longer-standing issue within the home. Investigators are examining the timeline of events to determine whether the crime was spontaneous or premeditated. This includes analyzing the suspect's movements prior to and after shooting, how the weapon was accessed, and whether there were any written, digital, or verbal indicators that the crime was anticipated. The firearm used was found at the scene and is believed to have been owned legally by the family. Investigators are working to determine how Trevor gained access to the weapon, whether it was stored securely, and if there were lapses in household firearm safety protocols. Investigators are also reviewing Trevor's academic records, disciplinary history, and social behavior. Interviews have been conducted with teachers, classmates, and relatives to determine if any prior behavior might have foreshadowed violent tendencies or emotional distress. The sheriff's office and county officials have stated there is no indication of a broader threat. The incident was contained to household, and there is no evidence suggesting Trevor posed a danger to neighbors, classmates, or the larger community. As news of the killing spread across Middleburg and throughout Clay County, community members responded with disbelief. Friends and neighbors described the Lee family as quiet, supportive, and respected in the neighborhood. The parents were active in local school events and known for being engaged with their children's lives. Trevor's best friend, Kyrie Bamman, spoke with local media and stated, "They treated me like family." This echoed sentiments from others in the community who described the couple as generous and welcoming. David and Brandi reportedly maintained an open-door policy and were known to many of their son's friends and classmates. The event has drawn regional media coverage and raised questions about youth violence, firearm access, and family dynamics. Multiple Florida outlets have reported on the case, and national media began picking up the story within 48 hours of the initial 911 call. Though unconfirmed, reports of a candlelight vigil emerged within days of the incident, with some sources citing gatherings of classmates, relatives, and neighbors outside the Lee family home. These events have not yet been verified through official documentation or photographic evidence. Online discourse and public speculation have centered heavily on Trevor's mental state. Comment sections, local forums, and media panels have debated whether the teen exhibited warning signs and whether the parents were aware of any emotional or psychological struggles. Mental health professionals have been consulted by various outlets to provide general insight into parricide cases and what factors may contribute to such rare events. No specific details about Trevor's mental health history have been released by law enforcement or court officials. Trevor Lee remains in custody pending a series of legal determinations. As of the first week of August 2025, he has been formally charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder but has not yet been arraigned. The Clay County State Attorney's Office has not publicly stated whether they will seek to try Trevor as an adult. The question of whether he will be charged and tried as an adult remains central to the case's trajectory. Florida law allows juveniles to be tried as adults in serious felony cases, including murder, under discretionary or mandatory direct file statutes. The decision will be based on several factors, including Trevor's age, mental state, the severity of the crime, and the findings from psychological evaluations. The court is expected to rule on the following key points. Psychological experts will assess whether Trevor understands the charges against him, the legal process, and whether he can effectively assist his defense counsel. If deemed incompetent, the trial will be postponed until treatment or conditions change. It remains unclear whether Trevor is being represented by a public defender or private counsel. Once legal counsel is confirmed, pretrial motions, hearings, and discovery processes will proceed accordingly. Given his age, the court will also review the availability and necessity of therapeutic intervention while Trevor remains in custody. Mental health services are often included in the juvenile system's offerings, though capacity varies by county. As of now, no trial dates have been set. If tried as a juvenile, proceedings could remain sealed. If tried as an adult, all court hearings, motions, and records will be made public. If a plea is negotiated, it could result in a reduced sentence or placement in a treatment-focused facility. However, the state may resist this approach given the double homicide and public pressure for accountability. Prosecutors retain the right to amend charges depending on new evidence. These could include firearm enhancements or upgraded charges, depending on findings related to premeditation or aggravating factors. The shooting deaths of David Lee and Brandi Smith Lee, allegedly committed by their 14-year-old son Trevor Lee, open a complex investigation with many unresolved questions. Although the immediate events are clear, a domestic dispute followed by a double homicide, the underlying causes remain subject to scrutiny. Law enforcement confirmed that the incident followed an argument late Sunday night. However, no official record has disclosed the nature, duration, or intensity of the argument. Investigators have not released whether this was a spontaneous dispute or part of a prolonged series of familial tensions. The absence of eyewitnesses limits the reconstruction of the final conversation. No neighbors reported sound of conflict, and there is no surveillance footage from inside the home. Authorities are reviewing texts, device logs, and internet activity for context. As of current reporting, there is no publicly available documentation indicating Trevor had a history of expressing fear, anger, or suicidal ideation. No police records or school reports show any formal complaints or mental health alerts. His best friend, Kyrie Bamman, described Trevor as well-mannered and intelligent. Still, experts suggest many adolescents experiencing internal emotional crises do not openly exhibit warning signs. Law enforcement is analyzing social media messages, journals, and digital behavior to determine whether Trevor had exhibited distress in private. There have been no formal allegations or evidence indicating emotional or psychological abuse within the Lee household. Community members describe the family as stable and loving. However, interviews with extended relatives and classmates are ongoing. Investigators have not ruled out the possibility of unreported domestic stressors. Behavioral patterns, discipline methods, and household dynamics are currently under evaluation by forensic child psychologists. The firearm used in the killings was recovered at the scene. Authorities believe it was legally owned by one of the parents. No charges have been filed regarding firearm negligence. It remains unclear whether the gun was stored in a safe or had a trigger lock. Florida state law mandates secure firearm storage, particularly in homes with minors. The investigation includes determining how Trevor accessed a weapon, whether it was kept unlocked, loaded, or hidden ineffectively. The investigation is examining Trevor's digital footprint, including his phone, computer, and game consoles. Adolescents often consume violent content online, and peer interaction may shape emotional responses. Investigators are also analyzing whether Trevor had been involved in any online groups promoting violence, hostility, or self-harm. There is no confirmation yet of any cyberbullying, dark web exposure, or gaming content correlating to the crime. Results of this analysis are pending and expected to inform the psychological profile of the suspect. It is not yet known whether Trevor's actions were the result of a singular psychological break or a symptom of prolonged, unaddressed issues. As of now, there is no public record of mental health diagnoses. Authorities are conducting psychological evaluations to determine Trevor's competency to stand trial and to assess his emotional state at the time of the offense. The case has triggered comparisons to other instances of parricide, where adolescent offenders acted out after prolonged emotional turmoil, often undetected by adults. The Middleburg case adds to a growing list of incidents involving adolescents committing acts of lethal domestic violence. Several broader themes have emerged in relation to this case. Cases where children kill their parents, known as parricide, are rare but not unprecedented. Motivations often include abuse, fear, revenge, or severe mental health disorders. In many cases, the perpetrator shows no previous signs of violence. Trevor Lee, based on known records, had no documented history of aggression or legal issues prior to murders. This case contributes to ongoing studies of juvenile domestic violence and the psychological factors behind parricide. This case underscores persistent issues with firearm storage in American homes. Whether due to neglect or oversight, unsecured weapons in households with minors remain a public safety concern. When children can access lethal weapons during emotionally charged moments, the risk of fatal outcomes increases significantly. Investigations into the Lee household's firearm storage practices could prompt new discussions around mandatory safe storage laws and accountability in Florida and nationwide. Families under stress may not always seek or have access to mental health resources. Trevor's mental state before the crime is currently unknown, but the case raises concerns about how mental health issues in adolescents may go unnoticed until irreversible harm occurs. Schools, medical providers, and parents are all being re-examined as frontline identifiers of youth psychological distress. The case reinforces calls for proactive mental health screenings in schools and primary care systems. Trevor Lee is 14 years old and charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder. As the case develops, debate will likely arise over whether he should be tried as an adult or remain in the juvenile system. Florida has prosecuted minors as adults in serious crimes before. The balance between punishment and rehabilitation remains controversial, particularly for violent crimes committed by youth with no prior criminal record. Legal experts are expected to monitor the case closely as a potential precedent. Trevor came from a household described as loving, stable, and active in community. This challenges the assumption that visible dysfunction is a prerequisite for youth violence. Adolescents in high-functioning families may still experience intense emotional isolation internal pressure, or identity crises that remain hidden from adults. The Middleburg case serves as a reminder that surface-level stability does not preclude deep psychological struggles in minors. David Lee and Brandi Smith Lee were found dead in their home on August 4th, 2025. Their 14-year-old son, Trevor Lee, confessed to the killings through a 911 call made from a local church. The motive remains unclear. The crime stunned a community that regarded the family as exemplary. What led to this double homicide is still being pieced together by law enforcement, forensic psychologists, and legal professionals. The case highlights the complexity of juvenile crime, the unpredictability of adolescent mental health crises, and the dangerous intersection of household firearms and emotional conflict. As legal proceedings continue, the justice system must now decide the future of a teenager who took the lives of both his parents. A community remains shaken. A surviving sibling faces life without her immediate family, and the broader society is once again confronted with the question of how and why such tragedies occur. Investigators continue to analyze evidence, testimony, and psychological evaluations to bring clarity to the case. But many of the most critical questions may never receive definitive answers. The Middleburg double homicide is not just a family tragedy. It is a reflection of larger, systemic cracks, some visible, some hidden, within homes, schools, mental health services, and the justice system. The story is not over, and the search for answers continues. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.